If I could give one piece of advice to any reader, it's do not force yourself to finish a book, okay? You will live to severely regret it. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, then hello, my name's Abby. Lovely to have you with us. This past week has honestly felt like the longest in my entire life, and I just needed a big reset. I think I need a holiday. To top that off, I honestly had the most frustrating reading month ever. And I honestly only have myself to blame for that. I'm honestly quite annoyed at the way that I behaved this month because it was just, in the end, a huge detriment to me. I am a person that finds it incredibly difficult to DNF or give up a book. And I shouldn't, because I put myself in one of the biggest reading slumps I've ever experienced, and Elsie Silver was the only person that was going to be able to get me out of that. It is, of course, March. It is, of course, a new month. So I need to tell you guys what books I read, what books I loved, what books I hated in the month of February. And if you aren't new here, then you'll know that I pick my TBR randomly at the start of each month with a jar of TBR prompts. I would say that this month I really kind of failed at that, following that. But equally, I kind of went a bit astray. I forced myself to finish books, or attempt to finish books I wasn't enjoying. And I know that's not the point, but something about me doesn't like to quit. Thinks that I need to finish a book, especially if I set myself that challenge at the start of the month. But this month has been a stark reminder to me that that's not helpful to anybody. So without further ado, let's talk about all the books that I read in the month of February and what I thought about them. The first book that I read, or tried to read, was John Dies at the End by Jason Pargin. And I was so optimistic going to this. I was so excited about trying something new, trying a different genre, branching into the horror genre, and I kind of loathed every second of it. As you can see, I didn't finish this book. I tried very hard. I tried also reading it on Kindle to see if that would help me. Nothing really worked. I was so uninterested in this book, it wasn't even funny. There's not a lot of times where I DNF a book, and I find it incredibly hard to do so. I think I got about 60% in, my Kindle's telling me. I'm using my plant shop subscription as a bookmark. Basically, this book wasn't for me. It wasn't for me in the slightest. I found myself constantly counting down how many pages I had left till it was over and I could move on to something different. It just feels like a massive fever dream reading this. I was finding myself trying to get immersed in the storyline, but then I would just lose complete concentration. I'd go blank behind the eyes, and then 2 pages later I would be like, I haven't even taken anything in. I don't know what's going on, but I didn't care enough to go back and read. I just kind of slogged through the story, really kind of not knowing what the heck was going on. I know that's kind of the point of this book. It's supposed to be trippy, it's supposed to be crazy, you're supposed to be just as clueless as the people that are going through the experience. But I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like that kind of style of writing. I thought it was a bit repetitive. When the main climax happened, I thought you could just wrap this story up now, but there's like 3 subsequent parts to that, and I thought, oh, I can't do this anymore. I'm sat here trying to think of a way to describe the plot to you, and I'm even struggling doing that. Like, the blurb of this book doesn't really give you much to go on. In a nutshell, in this universe, there's a drug called soy sauce that infects a person and allows them to kind of see the future, see everything going on into another dimension almost, and they know everything. I really hate being negative, but sometimes I just have to speak my truth, and this truth was that I didn't enjoy this book. I didn't enjoy it enough to finish it. I don't see myself ever trying to finish what I started, but I don't want to give up on the genre. I think I'm upset because I wanted to branch into something different and this book didn't hit it for me, but I do want to continue trying to put myself out my comfort zone in my reading. And if anyone has any recommendations in the horror, psychological thriller genre that they think I would enjoy, please let me know, because I do want to try. Trying to follow the story and like hating every character. No character to me had any depth. There was about 2 female characters in here, and they were just cut and paste copies of all the stereotypes that you could ever imagine man writes woman would be. Maybe that was also the point. I just hated it as well. Yeah, John Dies at the End, I'm very sad to say, was not for me. But if I'm being honest with myself, I should have given up with it sooner. I don't know why I didn't, but I regret it. This was my first DNF in a fair few months, and my first failure of 2025. John Dies at the End by Jason Pargin. Not for me, but could be for you. In other news, and in books I read in February and actually really enjoyed, we have Tender is a Flesh by Augustina Bastarrica. I've wanted to read this book for probably a few years now, and the TBR jar finally gave me the opportunity to do so, and I've never been happier. It lived up to my hype and it lived up to my expectations. I sat down, I think, before bed on weekday, and I read half of this book, and I was thinking about it so much I was getting a bit unnerved going to sleep, so I was like, oh, I'm scared. But I woke up the next morning and I finished it. I was so disgustingly enthralled with the story. Like I said, I could not put it down. I had to finish it. I had to read more about this society, more about this futuristic universe. When I was at university, I read a critical piece called The Sexual Politics of Meat by Carol J. Adams, and I had this in my head reading this, and I really grasped what Augustine Bazteriga was trying to say in this story. Love the commentary on capitalism and society and the power and the wealth that is tied up in the symbolism of meat. Once you open this book and start reading, you'll be so disgusted and so horrified, but you won't be able to turn away. This narrative is so fast paced. It gives you questions and answers them at such an incredibly fast rate. You cannot stop this thirst for knowledge, first to understand this barbaric future that on one hand seems so far-fetched and unrealistic, and on the other feels like it could happen at any point, and it feels real. It was horrendous, but it was horrendously good. Meat will always be a symbol of wealth, a symbol of power, and a symbol of masculinity, and I think that messaging is tied up so well in the way this story is told. I've been thinking about this book since I finished it, and that to me is a sign of a great book. It's a dystopian, but not the usual dystopian that I read, so I really did enjoy it, and I would recommend it. Anybody interested by this book, interested in what it has to say. The next book that I read and finished in February was Quicksilver by Callie Hart, another one that's been on my radar for a while and finally got around to reading. But this book is long. This book is thick. It took me longer than I thought it would to read this, and I think about 70% in is when I was like locked in, and then it felt like no time at all. But to get to that bit, it did feel a bit long. I did choose to read this on my Kindle alongside the physical edition, which I think helped me a lot. I've been describing this book to everybody as just a silly, goofy time. Like, it was really fun and I really enjoyed it. I don't think there's anything groundbreaking in the story. I think it was just there for a good time, and a good time I had. I really liked the romance in this. I believed it. I thought there was a lot of tension. I thought there was a lot of yearning, and the payoff was worth it. Essentially, this book is like any fairy slash human world story, copy and paste, I guess. It felt like ACOTAR mixed with these twisted bonds. Is that what it's called? These hollow vows. These hollow vows is what it's called. That is the ingredients of this book, in my opinion. We have a human girl living in poverty in her lands, ruled over by a harsh queen who doesn't care about her people, until one day our hero Sarah finds herself in a lot of trouble at the palace, but is then carried through worlds to the Fae kingdom by a mysterious figure. I don't know what I can say without spoiling too much, but that is basically the premise of this story, and it's really, really fun. She's of course desperate to travel back through the gates and get back home to her brother, who needs her, but is unfortunately forced to stay under the wing of this guy, Kingfisher, who wants to use Ceres for her powers and ultimately free his people. Or so we've been told. I really loved the characters in this book. I thought each one was very distinct. I love their conversations. I love the way the characters built certain bonds between each other. There was a very dry sense of humour, which I really enjoyed, and it was what I needed. The perfect escapism, which is what we want in our fantasy romantasy books. I don't think the stakes felt as high to me as they did in some of the other fantasy romance books I've been reading recently. I know books more about its ending, but the ending in this one was a bit anticlimactic. That being said, I did really enjoy it. I had a great time with it, and I would recommend it. If you love fantasy romance, if you love books like ACOTAR, you'll love this book. I loved this book. It just wasn't the best thing I've ever read, but that's okay, because it doesn't have to always be. Quicksilver by Callie Hart, another book that I finished and read in February. Next up was when I was in dire need of help, and I had no one else to turn to apart from Elsie Silver with Wild Eyes, the second book in the Rose Hill series. I think this could be in my top 3 Elsie Silver books that I've read of all time. It was so cute. I loved it. That jewel pop was giving everything and more. I really liked the dynamic of the relationship in this book. Sometimes I think when you're reading Elsie Silver, it can feel a bit cut and paste repetitive of the other stories, but this was completely new. It felt very fresh to me. We have a viral Canadian pop star called Skylar Stone who is fed up of the restrictions her label and her father manager have placed on her, and she wants to escape and make her own music and make her own way and be herself. So of course She goes to Rose Hill, record in a very remote but successful recording studio. On the way, she bumps into our Weston Belmont. This man is a single father of 2. He's incredibly loyal, he's incredibly fierce and protective, and he's also a fan of Skylar Stone, but he keeps it under the wraps. Of course, there's a situation. She ends up living in his outhouse. They build a really beautiful bond, and she builds a very beautiful bond with his children. And it's just so cute, and actually touched on some very serious and relevant topics in this book. I wouldn't say what they are because it will spoil the plot for you, and I think the message that we take away from this book is really important. But alongside that, I just had a great time. I love Elsie Silver. I don't think she's ever let me down, ever. There's not much more for me to say. I love this book, I love Elsie Silver, and it was just the antidote that I needed in my February reading. I then went a bit rogue from my chosen TBR at the start of the month because I was meeting this author as part of a fairyloot afternoon tea, which was so lovely. And it was The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This is a YA romancy book, and if I had to describe it to you, I would say The Selection meets The Cruel Prince meets Bridgerton. I think that encapsulates this book perfectly. From start to finish, I was loving my life. I felt like I was 14 again reading The Selection for the first time and just being like, oh my god, this is what reading's all about. This world is basically the aftermath of an alternate ending to The War of the Roses, where a fairy queen comes on the battlefield and ends everything, and hence becomes the eternal ruler of England. Every citizen in this world is offered a bargain from this fae queen. They can ask for anything, but they have to give something up in return. And of course, they don't know what that's going to be until they've done it. The girls in the high society are expected to ask for things that are going to make them more attractive and appealing to get a suitor and to get a husband. One example could be to get straight teeth, but you'd have to give up the ability to eat apples, or something really weird like that. Like, some of the bargains are really funny and made me laugh so much. But in our story, we follow Ivy Benton, who is kind of disgraced. Her family have been disgraced by her sister, who made a bargain with the fairy queen, doesn't remember what it is, but went missing for 2 weeks subsequently after that. And Ivy spends the majority of this book trying to find out what her sister bargained for and what she gave up in return. She enters her season, but the queen has one spanner to throw in their works, and that is that her fae son will be choosing a wife this season, and they can all participate. But if they aren't chosen, then they are ineligible to marry anybody ever. The girls that are chosen are then brutally tested throughout their time at the palace to kind of deem their worth of marrying the queen's prince. We have a love triangle between the 2 brothers in this book. The only thing that I would say about this book is I didn't really believe any of the romance in it. I thought it was a bit rushed, a bit insta-lovey, if you will. But I loved the relationship between all the girls. We get a chapter each from all of their perspectives, and that was kind of my favourite part of the story, learning why those girls were there, what they were sacrificing, what they bargained for. I really love that aspect of the book. I think this does have all the ingredients for a perfect romantic book, and I think readers will absolutely love this. I would have eaten this up even more when I was a young adult. I'm now an adult, not so young. It was exciting, it was fast paced. There was lots of tropes in this book that I really enjoyed, including the one bed. So yeah. The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, I think would be worth your time. Last book I'm going to talk about in my February wrap up is Battle Royale by Koshin Takami, which I have yet to finish. I am page 245 way through. I've been reading this fairly slowly. I haven't yet sat down for a long period of time to read it because I guess I haven't been that interested. But that doesn't really feel correct because I have been wanting to know what's happening, what's going on. There's just something that's not gripping me, I suppose. I don't know if it's because it's been translated and the translation feels a bit chunky and a bit hard to follow at times. Battle Royale, if you didn't know, is what everyone calls the original Hunger Games. There is 42 students from a random high school in this crazy, corrupt, dystopian future, and on the way to the school trip, they're all poisoned, and they wake up and are told that they have to then fight and kill each other until only one student remains. So very high stakes. I think the problem I'm having is that there's so many kids. It's hard to kind of keep track, I feel. We're following like 3 core members of this classroom, but I'm not as invested as them as I feel I should be. I'm more interested in the chapters where we get introduced to new students and find their little stories and what they're doing. It's a very harrowing read so far. It's a tricky one because I will finish it, I think. I don't think I'm going to give up on it, but I'm not as immersed as I thought I would be. It's quite graphic, it's horrific. I think I'm finding their conversations a bit stilted. I'm not really understanding the motivations for having this like system set up in the future. I don't know if I've just missed the point or I've like zoned out in a really major plot point on this book. It's not gripping me as much as I thought, and it's taken me quite a while to get through, and there is still like a sizable amount to go. I'm gonna give it a go. I'm gonna try and read it. I'm gonna try and finish it. If I really don't get into it, then I will DNF it, because I have learnt my lesson of John dies at the end. There we have all the books that I read in February. For a quick fire reminder: Quicksilver by Callie Hart, The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver, and Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bastarrica, which means that I read a total of 4 books this month. Can't lie, I am a little bit disappointed, but I keep trying to say to myself, it's not about how many books you read, okay? It's about the friends you make along the way. No, I'm joking. I don't really know what it's about. It's about doing your best, I guess. And it is a shorter month. I always forget, February is 28 days long. It's felt like an unsuccessful month. It's felt like I failed, but I didn't. I didn't. We'll be choosing my March TBR very shortly. One thing's for sure though, I will be reading Sunrise on the Reaping. Comes out on March 18th, and best believe I'll be pulling an all-nighter to read it. Thank you so much as always for watching. If you have made it this far through the video, then please, please, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment below. I really appreciate you watching this far, and I hope to see you very, very soon back on this channel. For now, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you when I next see you. Bye!